You are right on time, and of course this is the Summit O'Clock. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a long time coming. She's a Minshi, and I think I missed talking to you live in this particular way, and I hope that you are well from a part of the world you're watching us right now. We are talking tonight, not forgetting or not being blind to the fact that across East Africa we have countries that are suffering from the ravages of flooding, especially in our neighboring country in Kenya. We've seen those footages, and of course our prayers are with those who have lost their families, relatives and friends, and we still continue to request that we all remain vigilant in that case. And that particular issue is also going to help us to set the stage to our conversation tonight. And of course we're talking about the issue of food security, and of course what will be needed to revolutionize our agri-food systems in the midst of global shocks, including climate change. That is the focus of our conversation tonight on this particular program. And of course, if you're seeing me for the first time, if you're hearing this voice for the first time, as always, my name is Eugene. And thank you very much for being with us. Listen, this is not just a show that I'm here to talk on my own, but we are making it very conversational and interactive. Jump on our social media platforms as they speak right now. We are live on YouTube. Jump in there and be able to share your comments, your feedback in the course of this program. What will it take for Africa to feed itself and of course to feed the world? What is needed for us to remain resilient? That is of course what we're trying to be able to discuss right here on this particular program. On Twitter or the X platform, it's at I'm Eugene Anangwe. Go right there, you can tag me directly, but also you can be able to leave a comment from wherever you are and use the hashtag #TheSummitRW. I'll be tracking that particular hashtag through social media devices to be able to read your feedback. So please jump on board and be able to talk to us on this particular matters. Listen, I have an able panel and I want to invite them right here and be able to have them join us right here on set one by one. And I want us to give them a round of applause when we call them up right here on the set to be able to join us right here. I'm going to start off with Isaac Kagara, who's the president of the Africa Organization of Technology in Agriculture. Isaac is a very good friend and a very amazing person. Let's appreciate Isaac. Thank you very much. I can hear the faint clap, but they are good enough. Thank you very much. Those of us who are watching at home, please also appreciate our guests. We also have Nijena Hawa Chloe, who is actually the Chief Executive Officer of Wiz Up Industries. Let's appreciate her. Thank you very much. She joins us on the show, and we appreciate you so much. You're doing a very good job, and we'll be hearing more based on what you're doing as far as the youth voices are concerned. Of course, also joining us from the academia field is Professor Alfred Vizoza, Professor of Agriculture Economics. Let's appreciate Prof. Thank you very much for making time. It's not the first time on the show, but thank you so much for always creating the time and joining us right here on the program. And I want us to kick off this conversation from what we've been able to see, especially when it comes to the form of agriculture that we practice. It's majorly climate-driven agriculture, rain-fed agriculture. And when it doesn't rain, we are all almost staring at a crisis. And when it pours, we are also again talking about crisis, especially when you're talking about the flooding aspect of things. And I want to start off with Prof, especially from an academia perspective, based on the planning, the research that we all expect to be hearing or seeing coming from those within the academia. Where do you see the gaps in preparing us as farmers within the continent, even within the region, let's just say, to avoid what we always see as recurring? We know the weather patterns. Yes, they've changed slightly based on or because of climate change, but how do we prepare ourselves to be able to, move our farming from, rain-fed to a way that we are sustainable in that case, Prof?
Thank you very much, Anangwe. Thanks, first of all, for the invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a very important aspect to discuss. You could see that there is a very good trend in terms of recognizing, first of all, the negative effects of climate change and variability, which was not the case in the past. We tend to rely mainly on rain-fed agriculture, as you are saying, and that dictates also the types of investment that either the government or the private sector or development partners are investing in. And we are moving from a phase where we used to eat because the rain has been able to moderate what we need to harvest, or the sun. But now we need also to shift to a level where we as a farmers, or farmers need also to moderate what they are able to harvest based on the investment they made in terms of mitigating or adapting to climate change. So there are different levels, there are extremes, especially when there is heavy rains, which goes beyond what is expected or the quantity that is required to feed the production systems, or the sun that is needed. All those extremes will cause negative effects on productivity.
And we continue to see that.
And we are seeing that. But the good trend is that we are, when you look from the different documents, from policy perspective, from strategic perspective, there are a lot of programs and strategic documents in different countries already starting to describe how to deal with climate change. But the remaining problem comes now, how do you concretize? How do you make these operational to ensure that the technologies that are proposed, especially in the context of climate-smart agriculture, are affordable by all farmers? Or there are some investment meant to make those technologies available to the farmers so that they can be able to use it. I'll give you an example how it is very expensive. For instance, investing like in irrigation. This will take not less than 10,000 USD per hectare. So how many farmers are able to afford 10,000 per hectare? It shows you that there is need for the government, or in the context public-private partnerships, to ensure that those infrastructure are available for the farmers to also add their value in terms of their operational costs, like buying seeds or fertilizers or paying for the labor, but the heavy investment has still to be done by the government.
We're going to come and probe that even more, but I want us to just continue on that same note of picking up from the ravages of what climate change is doing in terms of affecting the productivity within our farms and even the entire value chains. And I want to hear from you, Chloe, because at the end of the day, you are within the value addition space in the whole agribusiness value chain. And someone seated at home watching us would be saying, maybe for them they are not that affected, because at the end of the day it is that person who's at the farm that is affected. But we know that if the farmer who's actually digging in the dirt is affected, then you will not be able to get the fruits and those vegetables to be able to, add that particular value. Share with us or paint for us a picture of how devastating the situation is, in terms of affecting the entire value chain when we're talking about these climate shocks that we're seeing.
Oh, thank you so much, and also thank you for the invitation. What I can say is that we really need to work hand in hand together to fight for this climate change or climate shock issues, because if a farmer is affected, everybody is affected. A food processor is affected, a consumer is affected. For example, I can give you an example. In Rutiro, they have these things of having like passion fruits, which are not a good quality. But that is not, we cannot say it is their fault. It's because the soil they use, which is affected by also the climate. So there are so many actions that is needed to be done. Not only for the farmers, we need to teach them, like for the people who have the education, how can we help those people to use the information that we have so that they can provide what have standard and also fight climate change. For example, when you see there are so many conservation practices that can be done to avoid that. For example, we know that we are having too much sun. So if we are in a sunny season, maybe a farmer can try to do maybe cover crops to avoid evaporation, things like that. And also in diversifying the crops or the type of crops that they use, we cannot say that they really need it and they really need to apply it, because when they diversify, first of all, they will avoid to disease. If I plant a crop today, let's say corn, I plant it for 10 years. That soil health is being damaged because the nutrient that corn needs is, let's say, potassium and nitrogen. But it would be better for farmer to try to intercrop, for example, or rotate. If they are planting, let's say, maize today, they have to plant legumes in the future, so that if legumes put nitrogen in the soil, and then let's say corn take nitrogen from the soil, it will be something that is really helpful. Right. We will have the balance for the soil and everything. So I think we need to apply it for not only for the farmer's profit, but for the overall profit.
Right.
Yeah.
I think then if we're going to come to President Isaac here, in the sense, if this is the state of affairs from the two speakers that have just spoken on the floor, then are we ready as a continent to really feed the world the way we say Africa can feed the world? Africa has the potential to actually feed the world, because we talk about over 65% of the world's uncultivated arable land is actually within the continent. So if going by the opening remarks we've had here, what then will we need for us to be able to achieve or translate into reality this common saying that Africa can feed the world?
Thank you, Anangwe. And I'll begin with one of the common expressions we now hear in Rwanda, that it's a good time to be alive. And they say this, if you can compare most of the African countries, the 54 states, most of them have been above 50 years of independence. And talking about food security, the importance of agriculture is not a new phenomenon. Yeah. It's very old. And I come back again and say that it's unfortunate that after 54 years or above 50 years, we are still talking about the same problems. Yeah. Saying that all food security, climate change, or lack of food, and etc. It's unfortunate. But while saying that it's a good time to be alive, it's because there's hope. If you look at Africa of maybe 20 years back and Africa of today, there's really a huge difference. Mostly, if you look at the young people, the perceptions, it's a good time to be alive. Coming back to your question, Africa has a huge potential to feed the world. But I don't think we're utilizing the potential. Though we are trying, it's a lost potential. Yeah. We are punching below our weight. And we have some of the reasons. Yeah. It's also unfortunate that we are suffering the consequences of climate change, and yet we've never participated in the Industrial Revolution. Yeah. The countries that have been causing the climate change that we see today, they've also been able to reap from the Industrial Revolution from the 1750s until today. And I think we are seeing some of the countries catching up with, we are talking about technology, we are talking about etc. And we are having now a lot of things. Countries that were able to use machinery and etc., they gained a lot of money. They're now developed countries. Yeah. Because we are not able, as Africa, we were not in the game, participating in the Industrial Revolution. We don't have money, most of our economies, and it's a reality. And now we cannot also cope with the effects of climate change, and yet we are being affected. Yeah. And coming to you, I think the only solution that I see is through the partnership of universities and innovation. Innovation is very key. And innovation comes from universities, the young people. And we usually talk about young people not joining agriculture. But there's a huge potential. I've had a chance of meeting so many young people from universities on innovation. If you see what they're doing, there's a lot of hope. But now the question is, as countries, what are we doing to leverage the opportunities in Africa to support and promote? Thank you.
To support and promote in terms of leveraging on those opportunities. And I want us to move this conversation forward. Prof, I want to start with you again, especially on what has been missing on the conversation table of amplifying the level of agribusiness within the continent. I think I was in a forum just this week, and one of the very senior officials did say, I don't want to hear us talk about how agriculture is important, because we all know the significance of this sector. Yet, it's a sector that still remains underfunded because of the risk perception. It's a sector that, you know, in terms of portfolios, when some investors are choosing where to pour their money, a majority are going to the real estate and they're leaving this private sector. So what is missing? What's the missing link? I mean, there are no pipelines, even when we talk about funding. If a funder or a big corporation wants to fund, often they say, but there's no proper pipeline in this sense. So why are we, this sector, we are lying to it that it's so important, yet we are not doing what it requires to happen, Prof?
Yeah, I think, what does it really mean, having agriculture as an important sector? And how do we measure its importance? There are different parameters, but one could be how many people are employed first by the sector itself? How many people are being fed by the sector itself? And I'm sure whoever is being either in industrial sector or in service sector or in agriculture sector, at least you will need to have your breakfast, you need to have your lunch, you need to have your dinner. So first of all, you need to understand the importance of the sector by how many people are fed by the sector, how many people are employed by the sector. And now when it comes to translating that understanding of the sector being important, it has to be reflected by the investment we allocate to it. Look at how many countries in Africa are now complying to at least the 10% of the total budget that was dedicated to be allocated to agriculture through the Malabo Declaration. Very few countries. How many countries are achieving the 6% of the growth that was anticipated? Very few countries. So I think one aspect of translating that statement of being important is to see how much of the total budget of the country is being allocated to the investment in the sector. That's number one. Number two, we should also recognize the importance of creating employment along the different parts of the value chain. I think she's going to talk more about that. So we tend to see agriculture in terms of farmers cultivating with hoes or machines. But you don't see how much jobs can be created after the production, along the value chain, starting from the post-harvest handling, go to processing, go to, to different industries that are connected. So there are decent jobs that can still be created, both for the youth, for the women, for different categories of people. So I think the lie where it is on exactly how much are we able to dedicate. And people tend to see it more as a risk sector because they don't control the weather. That could be one of the factors. But we know there are people who have been able to control the weather in other countries. If you go to Europe, you may find that at least 3 to 5% are only farmers, but feeding the rest of the population, 97 or 98%. Why? Because they have invested in agriculture, they have given it attention, and they are now harvesting the returns of the investment made into the sector, both being in having total production that is needed, but also creating jobs, and exporting and get returns of export from their crops and their production. And
so if we still today cannot control the weather, what then can we do? Especially when it comes to the roles that different players can do, let's say government, private sector, development partners. What then do we do in that case? Because if we are to point the importance of the sector, it is all in our faces. We all see that. But then why is it that we are still talking of the same challenges as like Isaac said earlier on, that those challenges still remain the same over years?
That's what I'm saying. The extent to which the leadership has given, in African context, you could see how much budget is allocated to other sectors. Let's say to services, to industry, though we don't still even have a good industrial revolution in Africa. but how much are we allocating to agriculture and maintaining or controlling the way that it's possible? We know the technologies that are supposed to be used. We know that you need irrigation. You know that you need agroforestry. We know that you need also like terraces in this context of highlands of different countries having the same topography like Rwanda. We know that you need to have seeds that are climate resilient. All those technologies are in the shelves. We know them. But they require a lot of resources, not only for their experimental design, but also scaling them to different categories of farmers so that they can be able to use them.
Right.
So I think that investment still remains important, controlling whether it's possible, but this will depend the extent to which we allocate resources to address those structural challenges that are linked to investment at the lower part of the value chain.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you say that, I want to ask Hawa here, especially as a young person, because sometimes I hear a lot of people say, you know, we cannot do the same things and expect different results. And I want to hear from a youthful perspective in terms of, for us, when we have another sitting like this, we will have a different set of challenges, not the same ones that we've had over decades. Do you think, as a young person, Chloe, that there is need for a shift, an overhaul of the thinking process? Because Prof mentioned how African governments perceive agriculture based on how they spend or allocate budgets to those sectors. Is it time for young people to say, hey, step aside? We're going to now show you how to revolutionize this sector and make it make sense. And what would those be from a youthful perspective, from a person within the different value chain or value addition aspect of this whole value chain? What are the proposals that young people would love to push through to those who really have what it takes in terms of changing the status quo is concerned?
What I can say on that is youth really have a lot of innovation in the room. If you go in what, let's say, youth within the universities are doing, let's say you are RICA everywhere, they're trying to bring something on the table. I think what is needed is to support them. Because when they come and they try to bring something on the table and they don't find support, they'll step out instead of stepping in. And that will mean that that person was bringing like an innovation which was going to change people's life, farmers' problems. Yeah. And if they're stepping down, it means that they're taking a lot of package outside from their career, and we actually need them. So they spend years learning that thing. So if you don't actually do what you have learned, or take a risk and do what you have learned, I think the government is losing something, because they spend the money teaching you something.
Yeah. And then they don't utilize it.
Yeah. And what I can say, there is opportunity, yes. And I know that youth, they have that capacity and they are really willing to take this. If you see youth, they are really creative and they are really willing to take risk. What I can say they need is the support. Is the support. Nothing else. Yeah. And also, for example, when I graduated from RICA last year in August, I didn't go for like job because I knew there's no employment. There's no job out there. So I said, let me try with what I have learned and then try to process something, because I did food processing in RICA. And imagine if someone starts, let's say, processing or let's say farming, you are creating jobs. That is one thing. You are creating demand. People see that there is something in what you are doing. They start producing that. And also, you are showing farmers that what they have is really, really valuable. So I can say that there are so many things that youth can do. What they need is just support.
The support.
And the support have been there. Let me be honest. Let me also thank the government. Government have been doing a lot of things. If you see on the calendar or what, there are so many opportunities that are coming in the country for youth. And I can say also for the youth people, they also need to play their parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
The government is supporting, yes, and it is true. And the government have to increase, of course, but the youth also have to be aggressive in this sector, because you will not bring an innovation on the table while you didn't spend so much on it. You have to be aggressive. You have to find, let's say, opportunities around, because what happens that when opportunity comes, you see other youth from Kenya, Nigeria, they are really trying their best to take things. If, let's say, the opportunity is supporting agriculture, green energy or what is needed is also you have to put some energy, because since it is something new, without energy, commitment, and passion, that thing cannot grow.
And it can move.
So all the parts need to play on this game.
Right.
Yeah,
Talking of parts, Isaac, I want to hear your thoughts, especially when it comes to private sector support to this particular sector for it to be able to, achieve its full potential in that space. I've sat in different forums. I hear this a lot in terms of private sector investment within the agribusiness space. And the notion is that private sector is shying away from such investments when there are actually a lot of potential business plug-in areas for them. What has been the missing link in terms of selling this whole agribusiness food systems story to private sector that is known to look at where there is profit and even as they invest in it to change lives, but they need also to remain sustainable? What is it that has not been?
That's why I was saying that they need to really understand. The financial sector needs to understand properly the sector as we move towards the de-risking the sector itself. Number two, I would not bother if they consider this as a potential sector itself. So there are some investments. Any investment has a notion or an element of risk.
Yeah.
Any investment. So now the perception that agriculture has more risks than other sectors need also to be measured in a way that you need to see exactly what are we talking about there. What types of risk are we talking about there, agriculture?
Right.
Are you talking about the climate change? There is insurance. So for the case of Rwanda, for instance, you know that the government has put some insurance products. If you give the loan to the farmers, there's some guarantee. They are also, this is provided. If many other countries in Africa can do the same, that will be fine. But what types of risk are you talking about in the sector? If they are linked to the weather, then give first the investment that is going to mitigate any potential risk that is linked to the weather.
Right.
So can you finance the irrigation? Can you finance the mechanization? Can you finance any investment that is going to prevent or to capacitate farmers to, to deal with the climate aspect?
Right. Very interesting. And I want to hear you from Chloe. I mean, what was your biggest challenge? Because if we are to revolutionize this sector or to make it achieve its potential, full potential, then funding is an aspect that needs to be dealt with. And I've heard your story from different forums on how you had to start with the little that you had in your savings, in your own pocket, meaning it boils down again to the aspect of access finance. And you said it here, that there's need for support. And that support is within also the financing aspect. What's the biggest challenge for young people like you who are getting into this sector? And what is it that you feel is often misunderstood, especially by financial institutions, those with the money, when you knock on their doors requesting for that financial support for you to scale up your business?
Okay, I can take this outlook into way, because even though the financial institution are willing to help youth, starting business and what, but there space where you go, you apply, you take your time, you do the application. You have the projects right there in hand, operating. You do the whole like application. You spend so much time, you know, there are so many steps, like so many requirements to be eligible. Someone, you are a youth and you are telling me if you want like 50 million, you have to, let's say, contribute 50-50. What am I going to get that 25 that you are talking about? It's really hard, really, really hard. So they have to understand we are youth. As youth, we didn't have job before. We are coming from right away from school for university, or some of us didn't even study. So they have to know that in their head. So they have what they are asking for big companies. It has to be different when it comes to small companies. Right. And also, on the other side, I can also say on the youth part. So there, this thing how people try to apply for funds. By the first time they see this fund is saying apply, maybe find circular economy idea, and then you just go like that. You find the idea right away, you do the application, and you find yourself, you didn't find time to know that business. If it is an agriculture business, you need to find time and then know what you are going to deal with. Because in agriculture, you are dealing with living things. It's not like machines or houses. If you don't treat them well, they're going to die. If the internal management is not that good, they're going to die. The business is going to die. So what has to be done also by entrepreneurs? They have, if you really have the idea, find the room. Know your idea, learn it. That's why I have been saying it is really nice to start small, because you find the room to know your business, know what is needed.
And if you make mistakes, the impact
you correct
is not as big.
it easily, and when people come, what do you need, they see that you really need it. Otherwise, they'll give you fund and you don't use it. That is the first thing. Or you can use it, because your project was not feasible, that project will not operate. So you will be wasting the resources that could help someone who can like maybe expand a job and then provide some people with some jobs. So you really need to find a room as an entrepreneur, as a youth, study the project, seek for help. If you don't have the knowledge about things, there are so many people with expertise, and find them. They'll be glad to help you so that you can do things well, and then bring something on the table that is really feasible, that can be done, so that it will also increase your, I can say, your percentage to get the fund, because you know actually what you have done. And if possible, I can say like that, start it, do it, and know what is the challenges.
Right, as you go.
As you go, you learn, and people will come and help you with all that we need. They're
really whispering in my ear that we need to start rapping. I don't know why, because this is really the shortest 1 hour ever. Isaac, I want to ask you this. For young people, for people within the agribusiness space who are looking for financing, because it's one of the biggest challenges, and they're not getting it from the traditional financial institutions, what are the creative ways that they can be able to raise this fund? Just real quick, what do they do?
Just an amazing question, and I wanted to give a real case study, and I think which is why I'm here. So myself, with my experience, a big passion in agriculture, and also from a young age, you know, parents practicing farming, it's something that I grew up with, and I used the model of agrotourism to begin the work that you've seen, creating a conference with our NGO that has, in the beginning, totally we actually never got any funding apart from one organization that contributed something to the event. But most of it I got from my pocket.
One pocket, yes.
And I think also SMEs and other people, you can't just begin a business relying on people saying that, oh, the government has to give me money. You need to think creatively, and you need to think beyond and lay out a strategy. And Chloe mentioned a very good point, also having an experience. You don't just wake up and copy paste. You say, oh, this is a very good business model. Let me do it. You need to be careful and you do your homework. And today we've been able to expand to other countries, and we're seeing some revenues coming in. So I conclude by saying that don't rely on only the government or maybe financial institutions, because they also see risk. So make sure that you also begin small with your small money. I had someone from the conference mention that some funders you have, it's either your family or yourself, or maybe fools who are willing to risk.
And so we need to look for those three people.
Those three people.
All right, I'm going to read real quick some feedback, and then if there's any room for us to quickly jump in, we'll do it. Frank on X says, until a critical mass of those with the means, required skills, view agriculture as a smart and not primitive or illiterate sector, it will continue to be underdeveloped and underexploited. Most people with capital, access to markets, etc., look down upon the sector, and this, he says, is too bad. Another one from Mugisha Chiza says, a very interesting topic of discussion. We are the first generation that should strategize for the future to mitigate climate change effects. Otherwise, the next generation will never, ever forgive us. This is what he says. I'm going to read quickly on the YouTube live stream. We have one from Mushambo Robert, who says, for the issue of finance, given an example of sub-Saharan countries, youth are so enthusiastic about agriculture, but mechanisms and systems of delivering such a service is always in vain. There's a big challenge in that area. And another one is, what do we really need to overcome such an obstacle, specifically on the financial issue in form of grants and subsidies they are given by governments? I think this is another area of exploitation in terms of grants and all of that. The other issue is security, mobility of skilled laborers for more advanced countries, and of course compared to developed countries on matters such as knowledge sharing is a big issue in that particular area. Let me read one last question here. Government policies related to agriculture and food security or systems need to be revised to meet development strategies of governments. I think we'll need another whole show to talk about how current, how alive are these policies to the changing global situation. That's an idea for another topic, right? Right. Yeah. So I want to say thank you. I can hear the sound playing, and it's telling us to start wrapping up or to leave so that the news team can prepare and come. But I want to say thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you.
We'll create another opportunity for us to be able to talk more about this in other platforms. So it ends here, but it continues across other platforms, that is the social media platforms. Let's keep talking. It's an important conversation that we need to continue having. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. As always, my name is Eugene and thank you so much for those who are applauding. Let's hear the applause. Yes, man, give us the energy. So we can actually leave the set. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for being a part of the show.